want to ask specifically about, I believe it is a type of immunotherapy, which is something called CAR T therapy. That's come up a lot. I see a lot of posts about that. I get some questions about that. So I know it's a relatively complicated thing, but could you explain a little bit about what CAR T therapy is?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we talked about a little bit before about how the immune system can be educated to see the tumor.
Right.
In the case of melanoma, there was that PD-1, PD-L1, which was acting as a cloaking device, right? But sometimes that's not the way that tumors are evading the immune system. And so we asked the question, is there a way for us to help the immune system learn and see that tumor where before it hasn't been seen? That's where CAR T came into being, and other therapies like TCR therapies. These are therapies designed to actually work on the immune system itself, the T cells of the immune system, which is one of the types of immune cells in our body. Those cells are important for recognizing the difference between self and foreign. And again, we want the immune system to recognize the cancer as foreign. So what scientists have been doing is basically saying, well, we can analyze these tumors and see specific proteins, for example, on their surface, proteins like mesothelin or folate receptor. There's several of these. And by doing that, they can say, well, if the immune system could see this protein that's really only on the surface of the tumor cell and not really found much else in the body, well, then we could have a system for actually educating the immune system to attack the tumor. And so this is where these sorts of therapies were born. And the process is fairly complex. So in order to actually, go end to end, they're first taking cells, the normal immune cells, out of a patient. They're bringing them to the lab, sort of like you could consider it the university.
Are they drawing blood for that? Or are they drawing marrow or?
Yeah, no, they're drawing it from the blood, and
okay.
Oftentimes it'll be done in something called an apheresis. If any of our watchers here have seen or have participated in platelet donation, it's the same sort of machine where basically it's circulating around the blood so you can draw out more of the white blood cells and these T cells. Once they have them, they'll bring them to the lab. And again, the lab is sort of like the university for these T cells. They're actually using viruses to teach the T cells which proteins to recognize that are back on that cancer, and then bringing it back to the patient when done without the virus, just those T cells now, and putting them back into the patient so that those T cells can now home in and attack the tumor. And and again, it sounds pretty complex. I think it actually is complex. It's quite expensive, and the world will deal with all of these things. But the miraculous part is that in leukemia, specifically ALL, acute lymphocytic leukemia, patients who had previously never responded to chemotherapy, never had achieved a remission. Now we're going into durable remissions where the cancer couldn't even be seen. These patients would then go on to a bone marrow transplant and be cured of their disease. And this is something that, again, had never been seen before. Those patients traditionally would have nothing left. And so that was pioneered by Carl June at the University of Pennsylvania and sort of has become a famous story in and of itself. But again, now the question is, well, where else can we put this sort of a therapy to make it work? Obviously works in ALL quite well. Now they're asking similar kind of questions in other liquid tumors and even crossing over into some solid tumors, things like multiple myeloma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. There are certain subtypes of those that are now being treated today on clinical trials with this sort of TCR or CAR T therapy, and it's showing some pretty amazing results. I expect that in several years, those will likely become standard as well. And then finally, we're all looking and hoping for the day when we start to see its impact in solid tumors. Tumor types like ovarian cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. Those have so far evaded and not shown to have as great of a benefit. Again, in sort of the version 1 and version 2 of these therapies. I think they're up to like version 4 now of how they're educating those T cells. And for the very first time, we're starting to see some positive data coming out of the prostate cancer world and the clinical trial being run in prostate cancer. And so, we were, these clinical trials are now multiplying. And I'd love to show you a little bit about a search that we were just doing last week for a patient with ovarian cancer, because we were asking the question, well, when this patient needs a new therapy, what sort of innovative therapies exist?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you're pulling that up, I'd say it's very clear that there's just more tools in the tool belt. That's kind of what we're moving towards, that, there is chemotherapy that has its place. There's radiation, there's surgery when possible. And then these are things that could come before or after some of the traditional treatments. And many of them are most likely going to be, without incurring cost, they're going to be available to you in clinical trials. I mean, it's something that is out there.
That's right. That's one of the benefits of the clinical trial, is that the company is basically paying for the drug to be given to the patient. And so the drugs, from the patient's perspective and from their healthcare insurance perspective, don't cost any money. There's still some charges in terms of the routine care that they'd be getting. But again, their insurance company is likely going to be taking care of that. And so for the cancer patient, these are opportunities to really get a hold of tomorrow's therapies today, and sometimes in a very powerful way.